for taking to the hospital. In our office, we probably average anywhere from 40 to 50 babies a year that come through our morgue. So maybe a little less than one a week. When we see children in the morgue, it tends to be infants, particularly 6 months and younger. Once they get past a year, that's a very unusual group. And then it starts picking up again in the preteen years with suicides and accidents. But certainly it's that first year of life that we see most often. Hoping that we have an answer when we do this autopsy, but I have a feeling it's going to take a long time. There's a lot of possibilities here, everything from trauma to infection to congenital abnormalities. There's a lot of things that can happen to an infant. Watch them.
But when Dr. G approaches the examination table, it is as an objective scientist.
I'm in the medical examiner doctor mode. You want to give me the tape measure? I'll measure, I'll weigh the baby. It's a beautiful little baby, as most of them are. I'll look for any kind of dysmorphic features, meaning the face isn't right or the hands aren't right. Anything that maybe points to any kind of congenital syndrome, but everything looked normal in this baby. Pretty dark brown eyes. Routinely, we look at the palms of the hands. If you look at the creases on your hand, you see they crisscross. Sometimes with some congenital abnormalities, particularly Down syndrome, they'll have some abnormal palmar creases. There's one that just goes across the palm from side to side.
But the palm creases on baby Anna are normal.
Things are usually pink. They don't have signs of smoking or obesity. They're beautiful, perfect little specimens, and they're just usually so pristine.
But they do require an entirely different set of tools.
When you autopsy a baby, I'll use the same scalpel, but we'll use smaller scissors, we'll use usually smaller needles, smaller syringes, and I have to use a smaller scale because the organs are so much smaller, they don't weigh on my regular hanging scale. So we'll use a small digital scale for the baby organs.
As with an adult, unfortunately, her death certificate still remains blank.
Well, the autopsy's done, but I think the work's just starting. Everybody thinks once you finish the autopsy, you're gonna have all the answers, and that isn't necessarily so, particularly with babies. Oftentimes, we have to look a little further for our answer. If the answer comes simply, I will be pleased, but I doubt that it will.
The microscopic slides, along with the blood cultures, are now Dr. G's last. Dr. G uses every tool in her arsenal to solve a case, no matter how rare the cause of death may be. But sometimes the answers can only be found in the most unlikely of places.
I'm really just left with no clues. There's nothing that screams of why he died.
Dr. G is ready to open the body of 34-year-old Jason Mitchell. Dr. G begins with the cranial exam because she knows that cocaine can wreak havoc on the brain.
Well, there's a lot of ways cocaine can kill you. Everything from a stroke to a blown aneurysm.
Using a scalpel, she cuts around the circumference of Jason's head. Dr. G is careful to draw the incision behind his ears.
I just was talking to the funeral home. They were mad about another medical examiner's office that didn't quite do it behind the ears. That's really important because you don't want to see the incision if you have an open casket. So you don't want it above the ears, you don't want it cut in the ears. So you want it behind the ear. Something's going on here.
Dr. G has just opened Jason Mitchell's chest and come face to face with a shocking discovery. There is something wrong with the pericardial sac, the blood vessels of his brain. His heart has grown enlarged. And over the years, elevated blood pressure, compounded by cocaine use, has made his aorta dangerously weak.
So this guy has just about every complication from cocaine you can imagine.
But on this particular day, one of those complications is about to erupt into a full-blown medical crisis. As Jason snorts another line of coke, his body responds to the rush of the powerful stimulant. His heart rate and blood pressure spike dramatically, and then disaster strikes. A section of Jason's aorta, near his abdomen, begins to dissect or split, causing blood to seep into the aortic wall.
That elevated blood pressure tears the inner lining, and the blood kind of goes through the wall.
Almost instantly, he is overcome with searing abdominal pain. His wife, Patty, rushes him to the hospital. But when he arrives, doctors dismiss the symptoms as a benign result of his cocaine use.
Now, that is a serious problem. They've missed that. He should have been hospitalized. There's a good chance they'd have treated that medically. But most ERs will miss about a third of those.
Jason returns home and promises his wife to quit his cocaine habit. And it's a promise he keeps. The toxicology results show no evidence of cocaine, only trace amounts of cocaine byproduct produced as the body metabolizes the drug.
He hadn't recently used cocaine. Since they told him to stop those 2 days, he wasn't using cocaine, but the damage was already done.
As blood flows through the inner wall of the aorta, the pressure rips through the layers of tissue.
The dissection is going towards his heart. A couple days later, as he's making his way to the kitchen, the second tear occurs in the pericardial sac. The blood just pours into the heart sac till it gets to the point where it expands the heart sac and constricts the heart because of the pressure on the heart, so it can't expand and pump. As soon as the heart can't pump, you're a goner, and it goes fast.
When Dr. G delivers the report of autopsy to Jason's wife, Patty, she receives the news with mixed emotions.
You know, she's devastated. I mean, she thought he'd finally was going to turn over a new leaf, and ultimately his old cocaine habit is what got him. You know, what I take away from this case is that people who are young think they're infallible, but they're not. If you start using drugs, there's a good chance they're going to get you one way or the other.
Welcome to Always True Crime, a podcast network bringing you gripping real-life stories that you won't be able to stop thinking about. Discover your next true crime obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.
Carrie Jade is an au pair, a therapist, a mother, a woman on the run. But Carrie Jade does not exist. This is the story of how one woman took on over 6 different identities, infiltrated the lives of vulnerable people, and lied her way into gaining their trust, until she finally got tangled up in her very own web of lies. Join me, Sue Perkins, and journalist Catherine Denkinson for Carrie Jade Does Not Exist. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
How far would one man go to prove his devotion to the woman he loved? Find out on Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing beside the Regent's Canal in Little Venice, Maida Vale, W9. 1 street east of the killing of pensioner Samuel Bragg. 1 street south of the double suicide of the Mercy murderess. Several boat lengths from the suitcase of Martha Ligman's body. And close to a brothel, inspected all too vigorously by 10 dedicated policemen. Coming soon to Murder Mile. It's a bit of a joke, as with the real Venice having as many as 472 bridges and 177 canals across its 2.9 square miles. Little Venice, also known as Browning's Pool, is just a triangular basin measuring a measly 120 yards by 170 yards, roughly the same as a standard football pitch. With one canal, 3 bridges, 1 coffee shop, a lot of litter, 10 homeless tents, a dead dog floating in an oil slick, and a sea of tourists all grumbling.
Oh, is that it?
On the north, Wednesday the 6th of February 2008 began as an ordinary late winter's day on the Kilburn High Road. In this part of northwest London, world events, like Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama's Super Tuesday race for the Democratic nomination, Prime Minister Gordon Brown negotiating a military escalation in Afghanistan, and Kylie Minogue's costumes going on display at the V&A, were mostly of insignificance, as the locals were either heading to work, to school, to the dole office, or awaiting a call on their immigration status. Kilburn High Road is an odd place, as whereas once it was a very English middle-class neighbourhood, and in parts it still is. It then established an Irish area, then a Jewish one, until it became a world microcosm and a melting pot of every nationality, language and culture, usually concentrated in a small part of a specific street, whether an Eritrean enclave or a Somali section, with one part being dubbed Little Beirut. For foodies, it's a tantalising assault on the senses, and although an area rich in cultural diversity, with many immigrants being temporarily housed here and struggling to cope on limited incomes while their status is being reviewed, it has become littered with discount stores and, unfortunately, a lot of crime. At 142 Kilburn High Road stood Summerfield, a handy local supermarket. At its rear was Kingsgate Place, an unlit side alley tucked behind the shops, and the kind of place you wouldn't go to unless you had to. At 7:10 a.m, 15 minutes before dawn, when the store opened and the delivery trucks rolled up, a homeless man in his 50s was ferreting through the rancid bins at the back of Summerfield, starving. The night had been cruelly cold. His makeshift bed in the doorway was made sodden by the rain, and with a familiar grumble in his empty belly, he ripped open the bags of food, too old to sell, but barely okay to eat. The milk was off, but only just on the turn. The bread was limp and soggy. Too many items he couldn't take away, as he had no way to cook them, or even to dry them out. But it was as his attention was drawn to a silver-coloured roller cage, as used by the shops to move their stock, that he saw something which drew his eye. In the cage was a duvet, used but clean and almost dry. He lifted it, but it was too heavy. And it was as he tore away the gaffer tape, wound around the knotted lip to seal it shut, that he saw within something unspeakable. Police sealed off the street, and forensics erected a tent as detectives went door to door. With no CCTV at the back of Kingsgate House where the cage had been left, and with no witnesses to what happened, the locals were unsurprised to learn that a dead body had been dumped there, having canvassed for years to have the building demolished, the alley covered by cameras, and the security beefed up. Local resident Cliff Ahern said,
"Until they deal with these alleys, there will always be a problem. You don't see the people here, but you know they're there because of what they leave behind. Needles and human mess."
Ada Barmay said, "I walked past it this morning with my children. How long was that poor person lying there? It's terrible." And Huma Griefta bemoaned the recent spate of gang and drug-related killings, stating,
"This is, I think, the 5th person killed in this area in the last 4 years. It's not a safe place to live."
With a murder squad headed up by Detective Chief Inspector Jessica Wadsworth, it was only as the duvet was opened fully for the first time in St Pancras Hospital's mortuary that they saw what they were dealing with. The duvet was used, but bloodless, proving that he hadn't died in bed. The gaffer tape was generic and couldn't be identified to any brand or store. The fingerprints were found on the tape, DNA on the duvet, and both sets of DNA and fingerprints were in the process of being checked. And with the body clean and free of any needle marks, scars or tattoos, it was likely he wasn't homeless, a drug dealer, or killed by a gang. Stripped of any ID or clothes, all they knew was that he was an adult male in his 40s, of indiscriminate ethnic origin, maybe Middle Eastern or North African, and that he died 24 to 36 hours before. And yet even with a fresh corpse before them, the pathologist couldn't determine his cause of death, as having been murdered in a fast and brutal way which resulted in no defensive wounds. Someone in the grip of a panic or a mania had crudely attempted to sever both arms and fully decapitated his head. Only that was missing, as was the weapon and the culprit. Detectives admitted,
We don't know what we're dealing with.
as it wasn't a professional hit, it lacked the cruelty of a revenge killing, and it was too calculated to be by someone who was mentally unhinged. As was standard practice, the detectives set up a temporary headquarters at the Quex Road Methodist Church at 3 Kingsgate, overlooking the junction of Kingsgate Place where the body was found, a decision which proved to be ironic and prophetic, as with the victim's fingerprints found on the Home Office's database, it turned out that he lived in the flat directly opposite, at 2A Kingsgate Road. His name was Lakhdar Weahia. Born in 1964 in an unspecified part of the North African country of Algeria, it was unreported when or why 43-year-old Lakhdar came to Britain, but the Algerian Civil War, also known as the Black Decade, was being fought from 1992 to 2002 between the Algerian government and Islamic rebel groups. For Westerners, the 7/7 bombings and the 9/11 World Trade attacks were epoch-making events in our lives. But for the people of Algeria during this dirty war, these kinds of atrocities were weekly or daily events, with the GIA, the armed Islamic group of Algeria, being backed by Al-Qaeda. Innocent civilians were discriminately slaughtered in beheadings, lynchings and suicide bombings, with acts of extreme violence and brutality, which saw children widely being used as both terrorists and targets. Desperate to be seen as a terrifying force, willing to undertake the most barbaric acts to gain power and the maximum of exposure on the world stage, they killed and executed over 40 journalists, 100 foreign nationals, and with the death toll rising so quickly, it was impossible for human rights groups to keep a tally. It is estimated that the number of fatalities was at least 44,000, up to as many as 200,000. With so many massacres rampaging across the country, including the Webu Aisha massacre, where 44 villagers, 27 of which were children, were hacked to death with knives and axes, the West didn't pay much attention until the GIA terror plot was foiled at the 1998 World Cup in France. And although they'd planned to kill hundreds of players and fans in a grenade attack with a bomb under the England team's bench and at their hotel, it was overshadowed by so-called England fans who ran riot like thugs. Like so many of his countrymen, Lakhdar sought freedom from persecution and a better life in Britain, where freedom of speech and a right to live in peace is something that sadly we all take for granted. Everyone who knew him said he was hardworking and polite, a kind and decent man who earned a modest wage as a meter reader for the electricity board, and although quiet, as the sort of chap who kept to himself and was a skilled electrician and handyman. If you needed a job done, he was there. A few years before, he moved into the upstairs flat at 2A Kingsgate Road, a slapdash 2-story house built on the cheap, with several cars on a weed-infested drive behind a 5-foot-tall iron gate with 2A hastily daubed in white paint, crammed into a filthy gap between a dingy spot called Leith Yard, a warehouse on the Kingsgate Place, and at the backs of Rack's newsagents and Tim's Cafe on Quex Road. provided by Camden Council. It was cheap, but he made it his own. And although he got on well with his downstairs neighbour, a fellow Algerian, he didn't cause any problems and he had no criminal record. Within a day of his decapitated body being found just 80 feet away, when they searched his flat, they found no signs of any struggle, break-in or robbery, and nothing which suggested his life was anything but innocent. No drugs, no guns, no cruel ideologies, no bloodstains, and his duvet was still on his bed. Lactou had lived a quiet life, and for no known reason, someone had murdered him. But a bizarre piece of the puzzle in this macabre murder was still missing. On the afternoon of Sunday the 10th of February 2008, on Blomfield Road, a residential street which skirts the Regent's Canal, just south of Little Venice at the gaping mouth of the Maida Hill Tunnel, police divers were searching the murky depths of these dark, cold waters. On the path, handcuffed to a detective, a big man with a freshly shaven head pointed to a spot in the water where he told them he had thrown something. Across the oil-slicked surface, an occasional bubble of air popped as the diver exhaled, and then, with a steady hand, he raised aloft an orange Sainsbury's carrier bag, 9 pounds in weight and football-shaped. Inside lay the cruelly hacked-apart remains of Latkou's head, as pointed to by his neighbour, Mohammed. Like Lactou, 46-year-old Mohammed Boujanan was an Algerian who came to Britain during the Black Decade, seeking sanctuary from persecution. But whereas Lactou obeyed the law and paid his taxes, Mohammed's life was either deliberately criminal, a litany of lies, or due to his declining mental state. He arrived illegally in the UK in 1996, having purchased a fake French ID in Spain. Across the next 2 years, he lived off the radar and worked cash in hand as a nobody who technically didn't exist. In 1998, with UK immigration after him, he pleaded asylum, claiming that he and his business partner had been threatened by GIA, the Al-Qaeda-backed terrorists. Every claim had to be checked, but with no proof that he'd ever been approached. By 2001, after 5 years of living illegally in London, he was scheduled to be deported, but appealed. By 2003, when his asylum was rejected for the final time, he had already worked several jobs, such as a handyman at a local golf club, and now his reason to stay had escalated further. In 2001, he had begun claiming unemployment benefits. In 2002, unable to work, he claimed sickness and incapacity benefits. In 2004, at risk of homelessness, he was provided a council flat on the ground floor of 2A Kingsgate Road in Kilburn, with his deportation in limbo owing to his health issues. Under Article 3 of the European Convention on Human Rights,
courts can block the removal of a person to their home country if returning would cause a rapid and irrevocable decline in their health due to intense suffering.
Physically he was fine, overweight yet healthy. But mentally, he said he was not. In 2003, possibly exacerbated by his looming deportation, Mohammed went to his GP complaining of depression. He was prescribed sertraline, a common antidepressant, and yet at a follow-up appointment with his psychiatrist at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington, it was decided
he had no symptoms of depression.
That April, he fraudulently filled out a disabled person's freedom pass, giving him unlimited travel across London, having claimed he was under the Mental Health Act, which he wasn't, as he'd never been sectioned. And yet again, he stated he'd been diagnosed 10 years ago with a personality disorder, which he hadn't. In August 2005, again with his immigration status being investigated, he told a psychiatrist at the Royal Free Hospital that he was hearing strange voices in his head and had suicidal thoughts. The psychiatrist concluded
he did not have any psychiatric illness.
And being treated over the year at an outpatient's clinic, his record states
his mood was improved, being prescribed a tranquilizer and antipsychotics.
Since the day he was arrested, just one day after Lacta's decapitated body was found, he claimed to be mentally ill, which prosecutor William Boyce QC refuted, stating,
"He has been trying to make himself look odd. He has faked illness previously to get economic advantages like a flat and benefits."
Of the voices in his head, Mohammed claimed,
"I feel as if I'm getting an electric shock in my brain. I lose control. I cannot concentrate."
Of the heinous crimes he'd done, through an interpreter, he claimed to have amnesia and pleaded his innocence as he couldn't remember committing the murder. And when asked by Orlando Powell QC, his taxpayer-funded lawyer,
"What do you think it is that made you depressed?"
which he claimed led him to kill, Mohammed said,
"Religion, Sharia, Islam."
Only to then claim he went on naked midnight walks, denied that he was feigning any illnesses, stating that he'd previously been diagnosed as a schizophrenic, and saying,
"I cannot specify what I suffer from mentally."
In court, his psychiatric history was a mess, as was his memory, or so he stated. It began 4 months before, when Mohammed went to a party held at the Quex Road Methodist Church directly opposite his flat, and met a woman whose name shall remain a secret. She was a 42-year-old Filipino nanny from Oxford, and a married mother of 4 who was a regular churchgoer and choral singer. They chatted, she was polite, he became obsessed with her, and she rejected his advances. In the last week of January 2008, 1 week before the brutal murder, having claimed in court that he'd been in a relationship with her, which he wasn't, he stated,
"I used a ladder and climbed up it and saw them."
That woman and his neighbour Lacta, who didn't know each other, having sex in the upstairs flat. He claimed,
"I ran away. I tried to calm myself down. I was very angry."
But did that even happen? On Sunday the 3rd of February 2008, just shy of 3 p.m, as the nanny headed to choir practice at the church, she bumped into Mohammed outside of Rack's newsagents on Quex Road. They argued. He grabbed her phone, and having ran into his ground floor flat at 2A Kingsgate Road, she followed him to get it back. He double-locked the door. She then realized that she was trapped, and that's when the horror began. With the street noisy, no neighbours either side, and Lacta not in, no one heard her screams. Using shoelaces, he tightly bound her wrists and ankles, and recalled,
"I told her to tell me the truth about the man upstairs."
Her supposed lover, who she'd never met, who he described as his best enemy. She denied it, and every time she did, he slapped her until her face was a patchwork of black and blue bruises. Seeing her words as nothing but lies, he threatened to slit her throat with a kitchen knife and a samurai sword. And with this woman who he called a whore, having supposedly cheated on him, boiling a kettle, he kept splashing the scalding liquid perilously close to her until she confessed to the tawdry love affair. She couldn't, as it hadn't happened. And although these mental tortures were cruel, worse was yet to come. He told her,
"You need to drink. It's your last day today."
As knowing he had murder on his mind, across every second of her 14-hour ordeal, she thought of her 4 children and how they could end up orphaned. In court, with her hair having never fully grown back, she gave an emotional testimony wearing a black wig as he'd shaved off all of her hair with an electric razor, telling her,
"You won't need hair in heaven."
And with her telling the jury, "He kept shouting at me to take my clothes off. Because I was scared, I did so. I was naked. He took his off as well. I will do whatever you want me to do, but just don't kill me." He raped her 3 times, forced her to degrade herself, and then in court claimed it was consensual. Across the afternoon, the evening, and well into the night, he subjected her to a terrifying ordeal. As being naked, she was repeatedly threatened, beaten, and raped, with her only way of escape being to tell the truth, or his version of the truth. But if she told Mohammed what it was he wanted to hear, what would her punishment be for that? She had no way to win and every way to lose. D.C.I. Wadsworth said of her bravery, "I find it hard to imagine the trauma, the fear she experienced while being beaten, tied, raped. She fully expected to meet her death. Throughout it, she has shown amazing strength." And although exhausted and terrified, it was around 5 a.m., 14 hours after her abduction, that having agreed that she would convert to Islam and marry him, that he let her go. She fled back to Oxford, and as far as we know, being traumatized, she told no one about her ordeal. Miraculously, she had escaped with her life. But Latka, her alleged lover, wouldn't be so lucky. Hours later, when Latka returned from work, knowing that he could never turn down a neighbour in need, Mohammed knocked on his door, told him that his electrics had gone out. Latka grabbed his tools and went into the darkness of the ground floor flat, where the circuit breakers had been tripped. With no argument or struggle, Mohammed whacked Latka over the head with a claw hammer, caving in his skull and exposing his brain, as he slumped to the floor, unaware of his death or the accusation. Stripped of his clothes and his ID, everything was burned, the weapon was destroyed, and living in a busy part of the city where many shops are open 24 hours. To dispose of the body, Mohammed headed to a discount shop on the Kilburn High Road, and with Latka being tall, he bought the largest suitcase that they had. With a meat cleaver from his kitchen, he clumsily hacked away at the back of the neck, taking several attempts to sever the cervical spine between C2, C3 and C4. And with the blood having coagulated, there was no pooling or spray, as the 9-pound skull came cleanly away from the neck and lolloped on the linoleum. To fit him into the case, next up for dismemberment was his limbs. But it wasn't as easy as it seemed, even with a butcher's blade. And having spent so long hacking and slashing at his arms and limbs that he ultimately gave up exhausted. Although Latka was slim, he was too tall to fit into the suitcase, even without a head. At 8 p.m, security cameras in Sainsbury's at 90 Kilburn High Road caught him buying bleach and a mop. The next night, Tuesday the 5th, at the Quex Road stop, he boarded the N98 bus using his Freedom Pass, carrying an orange Sainsbury's carrier bag with a football-sized object within. And with Latka's decapitated head on his lap, he quietly sat there for 20 minutes as the bus wendled its merry way towards Little Venice. Getting off of the Maida Hill Tunnel, he tossed it into the canal, later denying to his lawyer any memory of the death, dissection or disposal.
Do you accept that you must have taken the head on the bus and thrown it into the canal? No? Who else could it have been if it wasn't you? I can't remember. Did you use a cleaver to cut off his head? I don't know.
But the evidence would prove that he had. In the early hours of Wednesday the 6th, with it too difficult to chop up and too heavy to carry, Mohammed wheeled a silver-coloured roller cage to his flat, wrapped the body in a duvet, bound it in gaffer tape, wheeled it back to the supermarket's bins, and believed it would be disposed of with the rest of the rubbish. Only to be found a few hours later by a hungry homeless man. Mohammed fled 3 hours north to Alveston in Derbyshire to stay with his girlfriend. And although he'd shaved his head in the hope of disguising his identity, the next day he was spotted and arrested. When interviewed, his answers were vague and translated through an Arabic interpreter. From the day of his arrest, he claimed that he was suffering from schizophrenia and amnesia during his crimes. tried at the Old Bailey in November 2008 before Judge Christopher Moss QC. He pleaded not guilty to 2 counts of rape, false imprisonment and murder, but guilty to manslaughter by diminished responsibility. The prosecution refuted this claim, stating,
Sexual jealousy led him to punish this woman. Then it was the man's turn, but he wasn't going to be allowed to live. This was premeditated murder.
Found guilty of all charges, and with the diminished responsibility claim being dismissed as he'd never been sectioned or diagnosed as mentally unwell. On the 6th of November 2008, 46-year-old Mohammed Boujnan was sentenced to 15 years for rape and false imprisonment, a life sentence for murder, and ordered to serve a minimum term of 22 years in prison. He was not eligible for parole until 2030. Summing up, Judge Christopher Moss said,
You brutalized your victim, imprisoned her, and raped her 3 times because you were obsessed with her. You murdered the man you wrongly perceived to be your rival. Thereafter, you insulted his dead body by mutilation. You disposed of the head and the body in an attempt to avoid capture. You are, it seems to me, a very dangerous individual, and it will be for others to decide whether you will ever be safe to release.
With that, his sentence began. But on the 28th of December 2011, at the Court of Appeal, with it decided by Judge Peter Beaumont QC that the trial judge had misdirected the jury on the psychiatric evidence, or lack of. The murder conviction was quashed. He accepted a plea of manslaughter by reason of diminished responsibility and had 6 years cut from his minimum sentence. Mohammed Boujnan became eligible for parole in 2024, with the appeal judge stating,
The protection and elimination of risk to the public is paramount.
So whether he will ever be released on parole or not is dependent on his current mental state.
There wouldn't be a girl on Pitcairn once they reached the age of 10 that was still a virgin.
I'm journalist Luke Jones, and for almost 2 years I've been investigating a shocking story that has left deep scars on generations of women and girls from Pitcairn.
People will get away with what they can get away with.
In the Pitcairn trials, I'll be uncovering a story of abuse and the fight for justice that has brought a unique Pacific island to the brink of extinction. Listen now, wherever you get your podcasts.
Whew, so there we go, folks. Oh, another lovely story. Oh, what a treat. What a treat. More horrible people doing horrible things. What is wrong with people? Why are some people just... I know I've said this before, that I think it's an odd one, isn't it? Because should everyone who commits a murder be regarded as mentally unwell? Because it's not something that a sane person would do. We can all get through life. We all have problems. We all have issues. We all have people doing bad things to us, and we all have traumas and stuff like that. But we all manage to get through life without murdering someone else. Whereas some people, you just think to yourself, why have they ended up doing that? Why have they become that kind of person? Very bizarre question. Anyway, welcome to Extra Mile, the unscripted, unedited bit. This is we have a little chat. We do some quiz questions. I fill you on some things that may or may not have made it into the episode, because of course I haven't edited the episode yet. And then I switch off and I get rid of my hangover. I was out last night with a mate. She doesn't allow me to sit with her in the pub. Obviously she drinks all the booze anyway. Went out with a mate at 3 because he finished work early, and he was like, I'm going to come up to see you. He came up on the train, came to see me. He was like, I need to be done by 8 because he's got to get back for work the next day. 8 o'clock, we'd had a couple of pints and a meal. Okay, do you need to get back? Well, we'll go to one more pub. Went to another pub, then another pub. Then we went to another pub, and then it was like 11 o'clock, and I was like, you need to get your train. I tell you, he was like, oh, let's just get another pint. So we got another pint, and I was clever. I was like, right, let's get this in takeaway cups and because it's half an hour walk to the train station down a really lonely road. And I spoke to the landlady, and we checked, and the next train wasn't until midnight, and I was like, shit. And then landlady was very good. She was like, I'll order you a taxi. The taxi costs £5. Do you have cash on you? No, you don't. Okay, I'll give you £5 cash back. Tell the driver it is only £5. If he tries to charge you more, come back to me. I was like, God, you're great. But so he didn't get the train until 12:20, and it's a 2-hour journey back. Poor bastard. Yeah, and I woke up with a bit of a stinking hangover, and he works in healthcare, so yeah. Luckily he doesn't have to make life or death decisions, but poor bastard. Anyway, do you know, I did say at 8 o'clock, is it time to go home? And he was like, oh, well, we'll just have another pint. Couple of good pubs we found, though. Very good, very good. Good service all round. So yes. What else is going on? I still haven't moved my boat yet. As of time of recording, this is 6th of February. By the time you get this, I think it's the 12th of March, I think. So hopefully tomorrow I will know if the lock in front of me is open, and then I can continue my journey, because I've been stuck here for about 2 and a bit months by the time of recording. So I was meant to be travelling around the country in the boat. Not happening yet. Bit frustrating. Going a bit spare, to be honest. And don't forget, I'm a month behind you now, so by the time you listen to this, I'll probably be losing my shit. But there we go. Anyway, it's still raining. We've had weeks of rain. I recorded this in another 1 hour window where it's not meant to be raining. It's drizzling, because when it rains, it echoes on my roof. But apart from that, anyway, that is how dull my life is. Oh, and next week, as of time of recording, my boat is out of the water and I'm doing repairs, ready to do my big journey. Very exciting. I can't wait for that. Just set up some solar panels. I've just rigged up some Wi-Fi, external Wi-Fi, so my boat is being upgraded. Very exciting. Right. Thank you to Akila Collins and Lee Churchman, new Patreon subscribers. So thank you very much. And also I apologise for the delay in thanking you both for this. I know I've emailed you already, but I think I got your Patreon subscriptions. Thank you very much for that. Start of February, and because I'm so far ahead with the episodes, I have to put the thank yous like a month, well, like 5 weeks ahead. So thank you for being for doing that and for being patient. Thank you to Charlotte Peterson as well, who very kindly did a donation to Save Murder Mile and Keep Me Fat via the Murder Mile website. So thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Let's do the quiz questions. Let's see how many of them you got. There's 8. Don't forget, I haven't edited the episode yet, so some may not make it into the episode. Oh, do you know what? Because I got a hangover today. Do you know what? Last night, I was walking back. I do crypto, but I don't really pay attention to it. And I did all well. I started off with 20 different cryptos, and I had 10 quid in each, and everyone said to me, that's not how you do it. You buy lots of one thing. You don't buy £10 of each. But I bought and sold little things that I didn't particularly understand, but I quite liked. And when they did well, I sold them, and quite a few of them that sold at a really good price. And I just kept going and going and going. So I put in about 300 quid, and that went up to around 6 grand. And I'm just down to one crypto at the moment. And last night, as of time of recording, we had a massive crash where like 60-70% of it got wiped off in a night. And at 1 a.m. last night, my mate had already messaged me, old beard face, and he was like, "Oh, look at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's gone from it's down to ridiculous, stupid. What's happened? The world's collapsing." Not that it sounds like that. And while I was there, even though I was drunk, I thought I'll buy some more crypto while it's really cheap. So I did that last night. So I've already made extra money. Yay! And I don't know, it's amazing. I don't know what I'm doing financially, and I don't like gambling, but I've already taken out my profits. So for me, everything is a bonus. So I'm currently I'm doing all right on that at the moment. And extra money that I made last night while walking down a lonely country lane while drunk. Brilliant. While shoving 4 scones into my face, because I found the wrappers this morning, and apparently somehow I got a big bag of Cadbury's Dairy Milk buttons. Luckily there wasn't a kebab shop on the way home, otherwise I probably would have had a kebab as well and not slept. Anyway, let's do the quiz questions. Question number 1, folks. Roughly how many bridges are there in the real Venice? If you're within 10, I'll give you this one. Question number 2, how many bridges are there in Little Venice? technically, you have to be specific about this, because some people will listen to this and they go, oh, I think you'll find. Little Venice is actually the area of Browning's Pool, as I mentioned. It's kind of a triangular basin, but the area in and around Little Venice is known as Little Venice, but it's not Little Venice. It's just known as Little Venice. It's the place you can live. So there's areas where there are other bridges further down, but that's not Little Venice. Little Venice is actually the basin. I'm being specific. Anyway, how many bridges are there in Little Venice? Question number 3. Which Australian tiny pop princess was showing off her costumes at the V&A that day when the body was found? Come on, that's a really easy one. Question number 4. The Algerian Civil War was also known as what? Question number 5. What boring sporting event was almost ruined by a terrorist attack? Question number 6. What one job do we know that Mohammed did? Question number 7. How did Mohammed make it look like he'd had an electrical fault in his flat? And question number 8. What suburban village in Derbyshire did he escape to? So, let's have a look and see if there's any extra stuff that didn't make it into the episode. This was one of those really fascinating things. Before I start, I always go searching for the location itself. For me, it's really key that you've got to physically see it. You've got to understand what the building looks like. It really pisses me off when people go, he was murdered on Thomas Street in Camden. And you just go, okay, A, what number? B, tell us about the location, because it's really important. And with this one, it's really annoying. It's 2 Kingsgate Road. So I did a Google search and I typed in Kingsgate Road and it took me to Kingsgate Road. Oh, actually, it was weirdly, there was one news report said that he lived at 23 Kingsgate Road. But I checked the electoral roll and he actually lived at 2A Kingsgate Road. So I had to clarify that. Which was really important, because when you look at 23 Kingsgate Road, it's a nice Victorian terrace, 3 stories, very elegant, very nice. And I thought, looks a little bit too nice to be a council flat. Sometimes they are, but just looked a little bit too nice. So I kept looking, and then I read a report that it was just at the back of Rack's Newsagents, I love this bit, and Religious Goods, and Tim's Cafe, and also Leith Yard. And I was like, okay, you've got Kingsgate Place, which is where the body is found, and I saw that, and I was able to pin down, based on photographs, where the body was led to, and where the cage was left. But I was like, where's the building? Because the building, the Methodist church was there, and then next to it was 2 Kingsgate Road, and something just told me it wasn't quite right. And I thought to myself 2, and then normally if it's A, that means either the top floor flat or the bottom floor flat, or the basement, because sometimes it can be the other way around. But I just looked at it and I just thought there's something odd about this, especially given the fact that it was 2A and his was the ground floor flat. And there was no reference to any other people living in the flats as well. So something didn't sit right, because it was the 2A was a 4th floor. And then I finally looked, and then at the back of Leith Yard, there was like this shoddily built pile of crap that was pushed back. It looked like there was an old car lot in front of it with like 3 cars in it and weeds pouring out of it, and a crappy old gate and number 2A sprayed in front of it. And it looks like at some point that it was never meant to be there, but someone kind of built something and found a plot of land, built a house, and then they were like, well, what number should we call it? And they were like, well, we can't call it 1 because 1 is taken, we can't call it 2 because 2 is taken, and 3 is the church opposite, so we'll call it 2A. So it's weird. It doesn't sit properly on the road. It sits kind of out, and when you look at it, if you're on Patreon, I do your location video as always, and I'll show you the pictures. But yeah, it's a really weird little place. It looks like it was hastily popped up by someone within like a week or something. It looks like the front looks like those white Perspex-y patio doors, and the windows look the same, and it looks like it's really been bodged together, and it doesn't match anything else in the area. And when I looked at it, I thought, that is it. And then finally I realised it was 2A Kingsgate. But yeah, it's a really weird place, and people still live there today. It hasn't been knocked down. It's really weird. The building, Kingsgate House, which is on Kingsgate Place, which is at the back of what what was Summerfield, which was where the cage with the body in was found, that has been demolished, and there's new flats there now. And then the warehouse next to it, that has been demolished, and new flats there. And they're prettying it up and making it nice. But that building itself, the one that had the torture and the murdering and the rape, still there. People still living there today. And in fact, there is someone still there today, because I checked Company's House as well, which is a good source of getting information. Kind of electoral roll, Company's House, obviously birth certificates and all death certificates, all kind of things like that. But yeah, people are still living there now. I wonder if they know. Probably not. Probably not, because a lot of there was only one news source that stated the number, but that was incorrect. It was only when I checked electoral roll and repeated electoral rolls that it was proven to be 2A. So we just don't know. So the body was found by a homeless man. Sometimes people say it was a road sweeper. It wasn't. It was a homeless man in his 50s looking for food at the back of the supermarket. As mentioned, it's quite an impoverished area. Lots of drug issues, as mentioned. A lot of the neighbours said that the problem with those bins around there is you tend to find a lot of people. It's off the high street, so people can go shoplifting in the shops. They can come round. They can they can put their stolen stuff there. They can sell it off. They can buy drugs. It's not a nice place. So yeah, the homeless man was just looking for something to eat, and then he saw the big old bundle and thought, oh great, a new duvet for me. I wonder what's inside. Someone sealed it. I hope it's something nice. Hope it's food. Hope it's some clothing. Oh no, it's a decapitated body. So yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because so he went to the effort of cutting off the head, and he had an attempt to cut off the arms, obviously to try and put it into a suitcase. It was really weird. It was really badly written by the press at the time. It was piecemeal, the information that came out. Therefore, it wasn't really put into a time order, so I had to piece everything together and then work out the timing of everything, because press just can't be asked. They just go, oh, here's some gory bits, there you go, thank you very much, and move on to the next story. So I had to kind of piece it together. But it was where was I going with that? I can't remember. You can tell my brain's not working today. It's slightly hungover. Not as hungover. Well, Eva's never hungover, is she? Because you've got to sober up to get hungover. So she knows how to do it. I like to keep her topped up. You don't want her to sober up, otherwise she gets a bit angry. She gets very angry, which I don't mind. Kind of ironic, isn't it, that the murder squad, obviously they have to do this when they turn up at a location. They obviously forensics set up a tent, but and they've got their headquarters back at the police station, but they need a local headquarters where locals can come in and just go, hey, I think I saw something, or collate all the information and have the teams all together. So the perfect place for them was the Methodist Church at 3 Kingsgate Road, which was great for them because it was immediately opposite. It was, when you look at it, it's like not even 100 feet away from where the body is, so it's perfect for them. But it's exactly opposite the murder scene. They just didn't realise it at the time. It was the perfect place for them. They were like, yep, this will do us. A church, brilliant, thank you very much. Not realising that in there was still all the evidence that they needed. But it was kind of lucky because of immigration, because Latka had come into the country legally, and therefore applying for asylum, he had to give his name and he gave his details, but he also gave a photo of himself and his fingerprints. Now you have to give DNA as well, but back then it was just fingerprints. So he hadn't got his fingerprints on the police national computer, but it was on the Home Office immigration database. So obviously it still took a while to find it, but they were able to find him through that. Also, I didn't mention it in the episode, but because he was a nice guy, there was a missing persons report anyway, because he was a creature of habit. He worked hard. He didn't turn up at his job the next day, and people were like, well, this isn't like him. If he was ill, he would call up, but he didn't. As far as we know, Latka's body, because he was Algerian, he was registered dead, obviously, in this country, but we think he was probably buried back in his homeland. It's more than likely that he was probably flown back, but we don't have any records of him being buried here. I think it's unlikely. As we know, we don't know the reasons why they came to this country either, so I've had to take a kind of leap of faith on here that it was likely to be the Algerian Civil War. I mean, it makes sense because it was 1992 to 2002, and that was in and around the period that they were coming over. I couldn't really find any other reason why they would, but that if you were Algerian, that would be the reason to kind of come to this country and to seek asylum. I don't think I'll go too much into that because we kind of covered everything that needed to be. It was a horrible time for them. Mohamed Boujanin, let me just get that right. Where's my spelling? Mohamed Boujanin. As always, I had to sit down and because obviously I don't really know Arabic, so I had to get a friend to do phonetic spellings for me, which was really useful just to sit down and get them to do it bit by bit. I mean, I probably ballsed it up in places, but you know what? It happens, doesn't it? Yep, as we can see, with Laka did everything legally, and he stayed, below the radar, and he was a good person and all that. It seems like Mohammed, right from the start, everything is about lies. So we don't know whether he was always mentally unwell or whether it was part of his facade. And I think that's what I really liked about this story, was trying to get through this and having a look at his past, because obviously he claimed he was mentally unwell and therefore he wanted to get manslaughter by diminished responsibility. But in the trial, they said, no, this is complete horseshit. There's no evidence that he was ever mentally unwell, that he's most likely faking it in order to make sure that he can't be deported, because as you can see, he's clearly gaming the system. He doesn't want to be deported back, therefore he's doing everything he can. But we don't know whether he was or whether he wasn't, or whether it changed at some point. So that's what I felt this episode would be good to explore. So came into the country in 1996 on a fake French ID card which he bought in Spain. So went into Spain. We don't know whether legally or illegally. Then into France illegally, and then into Britain illegally. So as you can see, he's kind of gaming it all the way. He doesn't apply for asylum immediately. He spends 2 years here illegally, claiming that he'd been approached by terrorists with his business partner. Meant to be deported 2001. At that point, he's claiming the dole. So by that point, he's already started to add in things and work the system, claiming for sickness benefits, incapacity benefits. Unfortunately, when people get sick, that's what it's really there for. But unfortunately, there are people in the world who will just game everything just for their own benefit, and it's unfair on everyone else. Especially if you haven't paid any tax as well. I would feel bad going to another country and claiming benefits having never paid any tax there. It's just, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm just. To be honest, I've never claimed anything in this country either. I'm just one of these people who always believes that if I can work, I will work. I like working. What we got? Yeah, so his mental health, it's a really weird thing. I would love to have been in court when all this was being discussed, because obviously he's got his... was it Article 3 of the Human Rights Act said that he couldn't be removed if he had declining mental health, or if his deportation would exacerbate his mental health or cause a significant reduction in his life expectancy. It says this applies to severe mental illness, not just physical illness, and also those who may suffer from suicide risk as well. So obviously that's the kind of thing, isn't it? If you've got a physical injury, that's kind of easier to assess, whereas a mental health issue is a lot harder, because you can't see inside someone's brain, and you can't scan someone's brain and it goes, lights pop up and it goes, oh, severe mental illness. It's a hard one to assess. So therefore he's going to doctors, he's getting them to say that he's mentally unwell, that he's got depression, that he's been prescribed drugs, he's ticking all the boxes, but goes to his psychiatric team, they don't think he's suffering with depression. He's rigging to get a disabled person's freedom pass, meaning he can get around the free travel in London, but he's never sectioned at any point, therefore the Mental Health Act isn't being used for or against him. and even the psychiatrist at the Free Royal Hospital said, even though he said he's suffering with suicidal thoughts, and said he was hearing strange voices, although he didn't know what language they were speaking in, the psychiatrist, who's clearly an expert and knows what he's doing and knows how to look for people who are truly mentally unwell but also malingerers, he didn't think that he had any mental illness at all, but was prescribed a tranquilizer and antipsychotics and seemed to be doing okay. So it's clearly just a mood disorder, if anything. But experts do make mistakes. So this whole thing, even with the lady who he brutally attacked, and then Latka, who he brutally murdered as well. It's this is where it goes weird, isn't it? It's kind of, he says he was mentally unwell and that's why it's happened. The prosecution says no, he was in love with this woman, she rejected him, and therefore he couldn't cope with that. Therefore he created an entire fantasy in his head, a kind of a love triangle which only existed inside his mind. It didn't exist anywhere else. And as far as we know, the lady whose name obviously won't be mentioned, because you don't mention the names of people who suffered a sexual assault. Where was I going with that? See, again, it's happened again. Brain is just switching off at some point. The thing is, I'm not using notes, and I've got notes in front of me, but sometimes I like to just talk, and then hopefully my brain will come back to it. But I think he said the prosecution felt it was just really him trying to find a reason to excuse his actions, and because he'd already been fabricating, they say, mental illness in order to get himself to stay in the country, to get himself a free flat, to get himself free money, so he can sit on his arse and do nothing. Therefore, that became his alibi for committing this heinous crime. So we really don't know whether that was true or not. What have we got? We won't re-go through the details of the attack. I've pretty much put everything in there. It was trying to piece things together. I mean, hats off to the victim herself, making it all the way into court, even though she was still physically suffering after that. So the attacks was February, and she was doing trial at the trial in November, and apparently she was there for 3 days giving evidence. So hats off to her. Apparently she went back to Oxford immediately after the attack, didn't tell anyone about it, went back to work, continued dealing with her. Obviously she's got 4 children and she's married, and there was a lot going on, but apparently she was so traumatised she just couldn't talk about it. But the police were able to track her down, but they said it was really difficult to try and talk to her afterwards, because it was like, she's just obviously in a really bad way after a 14-hour horrific assault. So Latka and the lady themselves, apparently they didn't know each other, they'd never met, but Mohammed seems to have got it into his head that they were lovers. We quite don't know why. It's just, people do that though, don't they? He did describe himself as a loner throughout, and maybe he was mentally unwell. We just don't know. There was some suggestion in there that maybe the beheading was a religious thing because of part of his faith. In pre-modern Islamic law, kind of, and especially in the kind of extremist jihadist kind of groups, beheading is kind of used as decapitation is used as kind of a capital punishment. But in, where was it? It says it is often considered a humane and honourable method when done properly. Under Sharia law, it allows for capital punishment for intentional murder, and beheading has been the traditional method to carry out this sentence. So it was suggested that maybe he was doing this under religious grounds, but as you can see in there, he mentioned about the fact that he was getting annoyed with his own religion. But some people seem to believe that it was more likely that because Latka was quite a tall man, tall but slim, as you remember back in the episode with the 2 Korean girls, and the one Korean girl was under 5 foot tall, tiny, slim. she was folded up into her own suitcase, not a particularly big suitcase, and dumped in the woods. Because Latka was he was slim but tall, even with a large suitcase, even with his head cut off, he still didn't fit in the suitcase. He kind of made it difficult. And we're not too sure why he couldn't cut off the limbs. It is difficult. It's not the easiest thing to do, even with a... what did he have? A carving... Was it carving knife? No, a meat cleaver. Even with that, so it just shows. I think too often people think it's going to be an easy thing, but it's not. Don't forget your adrenaline's running all the time as well. Did he plan to murder them in advance? I don't know. It's one of those things, isn't it? He didn't buy the Dettol and the mop in advance. The plastic bag, didn't buy that. The meat cleaver he had for chopping up meat, obviously, because that's what a meat cleaver is for. But I think, there doesn't seem to be anything that he deliberately bought in advance. Gaffer tape, or the bed sheet, or a way to transport the body, or where to dump it. I think it's quite lazy, everything he did. I think it was very much spur of the moment. I think that maybe... I'm just having a double check through everything. No, I think that's it. I pretty much put everything I could. To be honest, it was one of those episodes I thought, God, I hope there's enough for a whole episode. And then I just kept digging and digging and digging and picking at every thread. And then eventually I was like, yes, there's enough. Thank God. It's one of those cases that just wasn't well reported, unfortunately. It was kind of out there. And it was only, I think, as of time of record... Well, when this goes out, I think we're about a week away or something, maybe 2 weeks away from the True Crime Fest at the end of the month. I don't know whether the tickets are still available. I think it's 200 in total. But because I'm doing this guided walk of all the murders in and around the venue itself, which is on Shireland Road in Maida Vale, I thought to myself, let's start researching all the murders in the area. And some I've covered on Murder Mile before, and then another one was this, and I just started reading about it, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. I will do a full episode on that, then I can cover it properly on the walk. So there we go. Whew, what time is it? 4 o'clock almost. Right, I'm going to shut up. I'm going to do the quiz questions, then I'm going to have I can't have proper tea anymore because of my hernia, so I'm only on herbal tea, but then I'll have some biscuits, which I'm not allowed, but balls to it. Right, quiz questions. Question number 1, roughly how many bridges are there in the real Venice? If you're within 10, I'll give you this. It was 472. Question number 2, how many bridges are there in Little Venice? So I'm counting Little Venice as what it properly is, which is Browning's Pool, the triangular canal basin. So technically 3. There's 1 at each intersection. Anything beyond that is not classified in boating terms as Little Venice. Although people call it whatever. They go, oh, it's all the way down to the Kensal Road. No, it's not. Question number 3. Which Australian tiny pop princess was showing off her costumes on the day that the body was found? That was, of course, Kylie Minogue. Question number 4. The Algerian Civil War was also known as what? The Black Decade. Question number 5. What boring sport event was almost ruined by a terrorist attack? The 1998 World Cup. Question number 6. What one job do we know that Mohammed did? He was a handyman at a golf club. Question number 7. How did Mohammed make it look like he had an electric fault in his flat? He tripped the circuit breakers. And question number 8. What suburban village in Derbyshire did he escape to? And that was Alveston. So that's it, folks. Hope you enjoyed that episode. And as I always say, if indeed you can enjoy it, don't forget, if you want to subscribe to Patreon, it's very much appreciated. It's a great way and a cheap way to kind of support an independent small podcast. Or you can leave a positive review that was really good, or tell a friend that you really enjoy, or if you're listening to it on a podcast app, just share it on your social media. Go, I've just listened to this is rather excellent, and the fat bald loser who hosts it definitely doesn't have an Eva Green obsession. Don't does. I only have just under 200 photos of her on my phone. Just under 200. That's not an obsession. That's just mildly interested. So have yourself a good one, folks. Stay safe and be good. Lots of love. Bye-bye.
Carrie Jade is an au pair, a therapist, a mother, a woman on the run. But Carrie Jade does not exist. This is the story of how one woman took on over 6 different identities, infiltrated the lives of vulnerable people, and lied her way into gaining their trust, until she finally got tangled up in her very own web of lies. Join me, Sue Perkins, and journalist Catherine Denkinson for Carrie Jade Does Not Exist. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
Want more true crime? This podcast and loads more are part of the Always True Crime Network. It's packed with box sets to binge and twisted tales you won't find anywhere else. Find your next podcast obsession at alwaystruecrime.com.